We go. So hi everyone, my name is Cindy Mattingly, and we're going to be talking today about animal behavior. What are they really trying to tell you? So I'm going to ask everybody to mute. Something's echoing. That would be lovely. Fabulous. So I'm just going to read what was on the website, so we're all on the same page. It says, my animal client human companions often ask me why their animal is acting a certain way. The human will ask me to tell the animal companion to stop or to change their behavior. The animal behavior is always about communication. So they're trying to tell you something. In this class, we're going to review basic animal behaviors, what each is intended to communicate, and I always try to help the human companion understand that their animal is not behaving badly, they're simply trying to communicate. So I hope you'll leave this class with a better acceptance of animal behavior as a form of communication and the potential for a better relationship with your animal companion. So I'm going to start with the screen share, and it's here. So the very first sentence is a premise of animal behavior. It is always a response to stimuli in the environment. So just like Beverly had been sharing and brought Charlie, her bird with, initially, and the bird was worried about a balloon. And she could tell that it was making, he kept looking. So again, his behavior was trying to communicate something. So she took care of it. So this is one of the examples of whatever the animal's doing, they're trying to communicate something to you as the human. So I was sharing right before everybody came on that I have a client whose dog would urinate on the bed. So there was a very specific communication going on. The dog was intensifying. It used to be on the floor and then it was on the bed. So you can just see that the communication was getting more and more intense. And the dog was trying to tell the owner something. So the first thing in that is you want to be aware of your own state of being. If you think you're covering up your emotional state, you're fooling yourself. The animal already knows that maybe your outside's looking happy, but your inside's depressed or sad or angry. And that incoherence of the energy is the stimuli. It's not that they go, oh, your outside looks happy and your inside looks this way. So the stimulation of the cat's running around crazy, you're like, what's going on? And that's because the cats, the dog, the horse, the bird, they're responding to what's in the field. And I'm just talking in that particular case around domestic animals. Wild animals will have a different behavior than a domestic animal, for example. And I'm going to talk about that too. But that's the first place of awareness that you want to know, is that when the animal's doing something that you think is off or weird or strange or whatever, then you want to start looking at yourself, because that's what they're responding to. Animals read energy, basically domestic and wild, for survival. It's a survival skill. So then I listed types of behavior, and these are really, really basic and simple. And depending upon the source, you may find a different definition, you may find a different, but I use this as a ballpark. So an innate, so these are born and bred within the animal. If a horse their ears become straight up, which is called pricked, then the horse is startled or surprised or on alert. You can use a lot of different words, but that might be the horse's what they're doing. This can also be cats and dogs because they perceive something's going on and they don't understand. So unblinking eyes, so an animal that is staring at you without breaking their contact, this can be a form of dominance. So a dog or a cat, I put a cat down here because dogs, people tend to be more mindful around. Cats, when the cat is staring, it's not, some people find it a little bit disconcerting. I have one of my cats and she's in the middle of the pack. She's number 3 in the pack. And she stares at my brother-in-law and it kind of freaks him out. He's like, what's your cat doing? Why is your cat doing that? So she's trying to usurp herself, right? She's trying to get in front of, making sure he knows that she's in front of him. So that's an example of an innate desire to hold her position in the pack. And then a tucked tail, when they take the tail between their legs, you can use the word submissive. You could even use the word afraid. I mean, there's all kinds of, it can also be a form of a trauma response. I love Caesar. I've watched his show, and he's a big believer that if you're going to give your animal, specifically, of course, his specialty is dog, he will recommend that you pull the tail out and then do the massage. So because the tail is an indicator of what's going on in their system. But these are all innate. These are not something that they think about, they just do. It's kind of like somebody surprising you, you might go, that kind of idea. So then learned behaviors, this is the idea that, for instance, cats, they are another species. For them to tolerate another species, the dog, you can also put birds, you can put, horses and dogs, you can put all, but when they learn to tolerate other species, it is a learned behavior. If they've never met one, if you've ever been in an introduction where a cat and a dog meet for the same first time, it's a fascinating experience because they don't know each other. And it's not because they don't know each other, it's because they don't know the species. They don't really understand it. So that's a learned behavior in a household that's integrating. Many times, if you have ever volunteered at a shelter, this is why it says unsure about cats, unsure about dogs, when it's the opposite species. So that's something to be aware of. And that's the reason why the people, especially at shelters, are specialists in being able to either they know this or they figured it out or someone reported it when the animal was surrendered. Another learned behavior is, for instance, dogs fetching or coming when called. Those are learned behaviors. And they are, so if you are teaching a dog to sit for, say, for instance, for food, they learn that really quick because it's associated pretty quickly. But when it comes to fetching, unless they're actually like a retriever knows to do one thing, but it might not know how to do both. So it's just depending upon what's going on within them as a species. So that's a learned behavior. And then horses, when you do hoof care, you need this huge animal to shift their weight to pick up the hoof. And you have to teach them that that's what you're trying to do. You can use a hand signal. Or you can tap their leg in a very specific place and then maybe use a word, but that again goes into a learned behavior. So you're looking at, do they automatically know how to do something? You don't have to teach most animals how to be pregnant, have a baby, you know, that kind of thing, because most of them know how. And some of them, of course, there are animals that do get abandoned because that didn't carry over. But most of the time it's innate. So I just want to go on down to these next things. And then what I'll do is I'll stop the share when I get down to in-person and distance sessions, because then I'm going to talk more about behavior. So then what we as humans are looking for is permission and no permission. So we're looking for to be able to interact with this animal. And we want to understand their behavior so that it's safe for them and safe for us, that it's a positive experience. We don't want them to learn a behavior around an association with a human interaction. So permission, they will establish eye contact, but it has that, it's not the staring, it's they're watching you and they're just noticing you and they're making eye contact. And a great example of this is I was at a horse rescue, equine rescue, and one of the horses kept walking by me, but didn't stay near me. And the horse would turn around about 6-8 feet away and then look at me. And I just thought, oh, okay, just that's a no permission. She moved away, but she kept doing it. She'd pass me and then she'd look at me. And then she'd pass me and she'd look at me. So finally I turned towards her. And when I asked, oh, would you like some Reiki? Literally, she shook her head. So I was like, okay, I got my eye contact. She was trying to tell me she was intrigued. Animals will sniff you if they're curious. So when they get close enough and they are sniffing, you want to allow that. So that's another way of them giving you permission. And licks, I call them kisses. A great example of that permission is one of my clients. I owned a dog walking service, and one of my clients had a part wolf. And she had moved to the area, and his name was Thunder. And she told me, now I'm just telling you that I don't keep too many dog walkers because he intimidates them. And I was like, okay. She didn't tell me that he was part wolf, but I walk in and he walks right over to me. He sits down and I don't move. He's staring at me. I'm staring at him. And I was like, those blue eyes of the wolf, it was a little freaky. But then he walked over and he licked my hand. And I was the dog walker until she moved away. So he was giving his permission, and he never gave me a trouble. He was the best dog, so smart. So you want to just pay attention, but you have to give them the time and space to communicate it. Many animals, especially domestic, but domestic, they may hesitate because maybe they've never been given a voice. They've never been given the opportunity to show you in some behavior, yes or no. And then the wild animals, I was going to the Bronx Zoo in New York. And again, they are doing the same thing. They're teaching these wild animals to communicate so that they can take care of them better. The larger the animal, the more important that they participate, very similar to the horse. So they were teaching them learned behaviors so that the animal could assist with their own care. It was a pretty profound experience. So you're looking for that permission. Now, in the no permission, again, you have to give them that space, but it's all, they may pace. You see a lot of pacing in the shelters, but I saw a lot of pacing in the zoo also, even though they're the curator that was taking me around, they were phenomenal. They were totally watching, they were totally paying attention. But of course, when an animal perceives your energy, that you're listening, they're going to communicate. So they had a cheetah, and that was the cheetah would eye contact and then pace. Eye contact and then pace. So again, the animal was saying, you know, like basically, I need some kind of help here. I'm trying to tell you this. And so when I shared that with the curator, they increased the enrichment that they offered this particular cheetah on a daily basis. So moving away, the horse that I used as an example, coming towards me, then walking away and being at a distance. And then that was why I didn't engage, is because I was like, well, looks like don't really want it. But that moving away sometimes is about the intensity of the energy. Some animals don't want to be touched because the energy that you might be offering, whatever, it might just be too much. I have a lot of positive success with animals doing distance sessions, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. And then when they turn away, again, you want to pause, because there's a great video on my YouTube channel of me doing a session with Frankie Noodles. Jen actually took it, and he turns himself around and then backs into me, showing me this is where I want you to work. But if they turn their back to you, you want to be mindful, because if it's a dog or a cat, they might be communicating. But if it's a horse, you want to be mindful. They might be setting it up to tell you to go away. So you want to give them time to communicate. And then I'm going to stop the share part to really use examples and talk about in-person versus distant sessions. Okay. So all my examples that I've given so far have all been about in-person. None of them were about a distant session, because this is where the energy, it's all about the energy. And one of the things that I've talked about in other Magic Mondays is, how do you pay attention to the energy? When is it yours? When is it theirs? Especially when you're working with animals and you're trying to read another being. So does anybody have a thought about that? How do you go from an in-person, because many of you have heard me talk about animals, but how do you go from an in-person to distant? What's that? Where's the language there? The bridge? Any thoughts? Come on. I know you guys know. Jen, I know you know.
You have to be really grounded, right?
Right. That's you being responsible for your state of being. So that's great. What else? How do you take that information? You know what happens in the physical. How do you take that into a distance session to read the behavior? Because this is what we're talking about, right? How do you do that?
You feel it in your own body?
Spot on. Right? So you're like, okay, I was with you until you said, when the ears prick on a horse, how am I going to feel that in my own body? How are you going to feel it in your own body?
Well, you could get an image of that.
Spot.
Or I know when I was doing a lot of distance Reiki with the animals at the shelter, like they would talk to me. Like I would just not necessarily hear their words, but their words would appear.
That's exactly right, right? You're going to use all those senses. You're going to see it. You're going to hear it. You're going to feel it. You're going to know it. You can even taste it. You can smell it. Those are all the ways of intuitive working. So now let's go through all these examples I just used and think about, feel it. Okay, where would unblinking eyes, they're trying to dominate you. How do you know that? There's no words going on here. Well, how are you going to feel if someone tries to dominate you? What's that feeling in your body?
You're going to lean back a little. You're going to feel that energy coming at you.
It's going to feel pushing, right? That's totally right, Beverly. You're also like, when somebody tries to dominate me, I feel anxious. So if an animal that you're working with, or a human, but an animal, and you get this experience of, ooh, I don't like this feeling. I feel really anxious. I feel like I want to back up, like Beverly said. I want to back up. I want to, I feel the pushing energy, because that is dominance. So you just, oh, this is what this dog, cat, bird is trying to do. Back off, right? That's their communication. They might say it in actual words. They might say it in an image. They might say it, but their behavior, the energy of the behavior is always present in their communication. We just expect it to be visual. But when you do this kind of communication with the animal, then what you're doing is you've opened up not only your world, but their world, because they can now communicate with you clearly in all these different avenues. Because remember that intuition is really just perception, your sensory perception, and you're interpreting it at this different vibration, right? We see things with our physical eyes, but you can see auras with your physical eyes. What's that? Oh, okay, your eyes are interpreting this energy at a higher vibration. Fantastic, that's great. So this is, you want to be just, so let's go to tucked tail. So you got a tucked tail experience, dog, cat, birds they might not tuck their tail, but they definitely are submissive. They're, so there's all kinds of different behaviors, and you may see a tucked tail on a bird in a distant session. Why? Why would you see something or hear something or know something and it's totally not physically possible?
Is it that it's your experience, that's how you've experienced that feeling before?
You got it. You just read the energy by looking at, okay, well, birds don't tuck their tails. And when are you being there, right? We're being logical. But animals don't think in logic. We're the ones that think in logic. And so what are they doing? They're communicating in energy, and you're interpreting in the way that you can do it, whatever your experience is. I mean, I feel very blessed that I have worked with many species, both domestic and wild, and it has taught me so much, but it's whether I'm in the physical experience with them or at a distance session, for me, it's all the same. So that's great. Okay. So tuck to tail, what would that feel like? What would tucked tail feel like? Where would you perceive it in your body?
So I don't know why this image came to me, but it did. I went to Catholic school, so I was thinking about, like, I saw the picture of the nuns and how I would feel is that kind of like pulling in my stomach area, like, don't hit me, don't call on me, don't, that kind of a thing.
Don't notice me.
Yeah.
So that kind of image that you got was the way your system interpreted the energy. And, the energy is the energy. But what we give is an interpretation of that behavior or that image is all individual. We could all have the same situation happen with one animal, and all of us might read the energy with a different word because of our uniqueness. That's so key. Is that helpful? Yeah? Okay, there's some nods. Good. Okay. So let's look at learned behaviors. So cats tolerating dogs, or cats, dogs, horses, birds, other species. What's that? When it works, that's lovely. Multi-species, environments. Wicked cool. Well, what if it doesn't work? Why is that? Are they just being stubborn?
Well, to me, they're not reading each other's energy. Like, there's so much tension between the animals that they haven't let themselves relax into it, into the getting to know each other.
Well, to get a little deeper, we're asking them to learn something.
Oh, yeah.
And where are they? They're in their innateness. So their behavior is going to be one of my species only. I understand. That's it. So that would be the example of why it might happen. At a shelter where they say, well, this cat can't be put with other cats, or this cat can't be put with other dogs or children, or what. They're not interested in the multi-species experience. I had a household of 3 dogs. Everything was cool when I had the dominant dog. And then I had, the next one. And then I had my Bailey boy, which was my golden retriever that would stare at me lovingly and walk into the wall. I mean, he was just lovely, but I mean, the elevator wasn't quite moving in all those same directions, right? So everything was cool with the 3 of them. But when the first dog passed, now I had a different set of these 2. And the little one, this was Mickey, my favorite lovely dog, was always trying to dominate my Bailey boy. Bailey was 3 times his size. Yeah, there was not a lot of harmony. So you can just, it's like, okay. So the pack, the innateness of the experience was the behavior. This was why the behavior was happening. Was I going to be able to change that? I don't know. It didn't change, just so I did go and consult other behavioralists and stuff like that, but they weren't interested. Well, Bailey didn't care. Bailey just wanted to be with me. Mickey just wanted to dominate. It's like, okay. So what would that kind of energy feel like? You're doing a distance session. The person has asked you, can you just find out if this cat will let this cat come in or this dog come in? What's it going to feel like?
How about fingernails on a chalkboard?
I would take it even up more. It would be heck no, right? What's that feel like when somebody doesn't even hesitate? The answer is no. Right? It's like, boom, there's a wall. I had an owner who had 2 feral cats outside, and then she has a very dominant prey-driven animal. They're all cats, male, inside.
Mm.
And she wanted to bring these 2 ferals in.
Yeah.
That was exactly, he was crystal clear. I have no interest in sharing and keep them out. Okay. And of course she was like, oh, they'll get along eventually. I don't think so. She goes, well, can you check in with the feral on the outside? And all they wanted to do was to get in here in time. I don't know if they were male or female, but they were all dominant. So all I could see was one big cat fight. And that was the image that I got. So you want to pay attention, not only whether you're in person, in person, or whether you're doing a distance session. You can use your eyes, but then stop, give the animal time to communicate the energy, and that's where you're going to get the deeper information. So I use both pieces of information if I'm in person, I use both. When it's a distance, I sometimes have to close my eyes. There's so much information coming in because what's their language? It's all energy. There's no verbal. They might make sounds, but it's not our language, right? So it's a little harder to experience. Then we have fetching. So if an animal wants to do the fetching or they want to come when called, you might feel one thing, right? Sure, I'll play with you. But first you got to get it clear, right? Millie, like you were saying, Isaac needed to know that this was cool, whatever his way was cool. And now he'll come get you on his terms to play. So again, it's about what does that feel like in your body when you're asking an animal, a species, okay, I want them to play. I would like to have some interaction. You have to teach them how that looks and is communicated. But how you teach them, now there's, it's like, if you listen to their other behaviors, they will tell you. All you have to do is ask them. I think I've shared this before. One of my cats had to have a tooth pulled, and her name's Joy. And I told her she had pain medicine. And I told her, I need you to lay down in front of me so I can give it to you. And she did do it the very first night. She literally came over to my feet and laid down on her side. And then I was able to give her the liquid. And then she did it the next morning. And then that evening, the following evening, she wasn't as interested. And then the third day, right, she just flat out refused. I was like, that's so, but she was clearly communicating. Yep, I got it. Because I communicated a picture, because that's how they think, right? In pictures. Because I was trying to make it easy. I didn't want it to be traumatizing. So I was teaching her a new learned behavior, and she took it, boop, because it served her. And my communication was clear. and I waited for her to communicate. So that, is the key. And then horses, to pick up a hoof. What would that feel like? Like how would you communicate that in an energy to a horse?
Maybe by leaning into the body, perhaps to take the weight off that leg.
You might,
You
right?
do it a couple of times and then put your hand on the leg, gradually move till you lifted the hoof.
Yeah. So you might do it in steps, right? That, so there's those choices. It depends upon the horse and the breed. As far as horses, or I was raised on a dairy farm. We did the same thing with cattle. You needed to teach them this behavior. And some of them, you could tap it once and they were on it. And then there were others that you could do the lean thing, just like you said, Beverly. And there were others that it didn't matter. It took two of us, to get them to do it, to unweight that leg, to allow the care. So if you're wanting to teach them a behavior, you image it, because that's how animals think. You can say the words, so the words can do the vibration. It can magnify your image. And you can even show them the bottom of their hoof in your image, because this is where you want to go. So in each animal species, and animals have personalities just like humans do. And, you can look at birds, horses, ferrets, bunnies, they all have different personalities and willingness to learn something new. Some of them are like, yeah, whatever. I was really surprised at Joy, because Joy is not one that wants to learn anything. She just wants to be a cat. She wants to hang around in her, beds and be fed. And yet she did it for me. So questions about in-person versus distant and the energy around animal behaviors. Or did I answer all your questions in one fell swoop?
I actually have a question about Bailey Boy and the other dog.
Mickey. Mm-hmm.
Okay. As some, and you said you couldn't get them to get along, but if I can imagine a client coming to you and saying, hey, I got this problem, can you make it go away? And if the animal just doesn't want to, there's not a whole lot you can do.
Correct. The key piece, so when you're doing work for somebody, right, there's this place of expectations, so I joke, people tease me. They'll show up and they're like, can I just have a Cindy magic session? I'm like, hello? I don't know. But the thing is if the animal is communicating clearly, then it's about my job as the interpreter of the energy, and I share it clearly. Then when the human gets it, then there's a decision to be made. And that was basically the cat dynamics of the very dominant prey-driven cat and the two ferals outside. Is she's like, well, what if I did it anyway? I said, do you want me to ask the cat, or do you want me just to tell you my opinion of the energy? I said, it would be a fur fight. It would not be pretty. It would be really ugly.
So I've never seen a laser show because I don't have a whole lot of interest in dogs, but I've seen Jackson Galaxy be in that kind of situation where the two cats don't get along and somehow he fixed.
Right. Well, he was really great Jackson was about reading the energy. And, because it was a show, they could pick and choose,
It's true.
right? And, he was really good. And he was emotionally involved. Like you could really see that in many of his shows where he would just tell the human what his perception of the human was going on and the dynamics with the cat. And because a lot of, at least the ones I saw with Jackson, was about the animal ruling the human.
Yes, but
He-
yes. And
Yeah, they were afraid. The humans were afraid of the cat. Yeah. And that's not uncommon, but the thing is it's like Thunder, the part wolf dog. I'm not a dominant person, but I am a dominant species. So Thunder could try, but my energy said, no, dude. That was what my energy said. No, I'm not doing a power struggle with a dog or a wolf. And he got it. He had enough domestic in him that he got it. And he was very respectful. Again, that was, he had a really good balance of those two pieces. The reality of is that he could have had an imbalance and it would not be pretty for her. Right? Because we have humans that aren't balanced, right? Our genetics, our learned behaviors, our innate behaviors. I mean, it's the same kind of scenario with humans. And our perception and interpretation of what we actually see, they may not always be accurate. I say that to myself all the time. It's like, this is a little off topic, but it was, I would say a session where somebody said, oh, that's part of my ego. And I was like, I don't think so. So when I'm in the session with the person, it's energy. I was like, oh no, it's archetypal energy. And that's very different than an ego, because an ego is an attachment, right? It was a pretty clear delineation for me in the energy world. So it's the same kind of thing. If it's an innate behavior, this is going to be one thing. But if it's a learned behavior, that can be changed.
got it.
Right? Yeah. Pretty amazing, right? That was a good question, Millie. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
So my ex-husband has a husky.
Huh?
Every time I go to visit, he comes to me and he turns his back to me, and I'm doing Reiki for as long as he wants to, and then he goes away. But there is one thing that I don't understand why he's doing it and what to do about it. He pees in the house. It doesn't matter where. He just pees in the house. And it might be a reflection or a mirror of my ex-husband's attitude. He doesn't care how the house looks like, or it's maybe a way of him to call for attention.
Not usually.
Yeah.
Not usually. Is he male?
Yes,
Then he's marking.
in the house.
Oh yeah, it's his
He can go
territory.
in and out anytime he wants. There is a
Oh no, it's still his territory.
okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very male thing to do, is to mark your territory. And if the energy in the environment is an uncaring, and it's not that it's non-dominance, but it's like non-possession of the space. Who's the boss?
Yeah,
Dog.
yeah, I thought so.
Yeah. So it's all about that kind of innateness. Well, if you're not going to run the show, I know how to do it.
Yeah.
I'm a dominant, well, he's also a dominant breed. They
Mhm.
tend to be much more territorial. They're usually lone dogs. You know, they're made to be working dogs, and they're made to live solitary, right?
Yeah.
You know, out in the cold and out, you know, pulling sleds and yeah.
So many times I raise my voice and I show him, why did you do this? I just cleaned it. Why did you do it? And he would just go out. But then I start just asking him and you know, just talking in a very calm voice and like having a conversation. And I noticed there are a couple of spots he's not being on anymore.
Hmm. Well, it's probably confusing him because his environment says this,
Mm-hmm.
his innate behavior says this, and then there's this female energy that walks in and goes, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So it's confusing to the animal because there's no consistency. And it's the same thing that happens as parenting. So it's parenting of children, human children. It's also parenting of other animals,
Yeah.
right? If you aren't consistent, the animal gets away with murder.
Yeah. It's
Yes.
very interesting. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's a great question.
I have a question about that. Does he have a job, this dog? I guess he doesn't, right?
Oh.
If he had a job, would that shift for him?
The owner?
No, the
The
dog. Does the owner give the dog, like, I'm gonna go to work now, can you protect the house? That's a job.
No. And the owner works from home. So,
Okay.
and
But there's no possession of the territory. That's the key. You got two males and one's marking the territory, then he owns the territory.
exactly.
That's
And
the key.
actually, my ex-husband's attitude is, let him do whatever he wants.
Yeah. See, so the dog, yeah,
Yeah.
it would be, because behavior is this response to the stimuli in the environment. So if the dog is marking his territory, that belongs to the dog.
And he's also so attached to my ex-husband that if he walks out of the house, if he goes somewhere, he's pacing all the time and he's so agitated until he comes back. It's unbelievable. I think he feels maybe abandoned or something. I don't know, but he cannot stay by himself at home, this dog.
I don't know if that's the case. If it's abandoned, the pacing is definitely something's going on, but I mean, of course, you know, energetically what I'm doing is going through you
Yeah.
to get to your ex-husband to get to the dog.
Yes.
I'm like, I don't get that, but you know, yeah, who knows?
Interesting, because I'm in the house and he just doesn't care. It's like, oh my God, this, you know, the guy left. What am I gonna do? Where is he? Where is he? When is he coming back? And if it's an hour, he's always constantly just going to the window, going to the in the yard and watching and watching and watching.
I think Beverly's question is really well placed here. The dog has nothing going on in his life.
That's right.
So then when his one point person is gone, it's like, where's my purpose?
Yeah.
I have no work. I have no job. So
Right.
I think that it might be more about that because he's a working dog, right?
Mhm.
He's a working breed and he's a dominant dog. Like he has nothing to do. This is usually when they get destructive, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
And
Thank
so, yeah. So good questions. Well,
Can I ask one more question on that?
absolutely.
If she gives him a job to protect the house while he owns, it won't work. It has to come from his object of obsession.
His perception of the environment and the man is the perception of that environment. Right.
Yeah.
Especially that breed, male, you know, all that. They're one dog. They usually are one owner dogs, right? They really prefer one person.
Well, that's interesting you are saying that, because actually my ex-husband is sharing this dog with his former girlfriend. And now she has a baby, and when she takes the dog, he's just really protecting the baby. He's very quiet, he's behaving. And I think the fact that he's going back and forth between the two of them, he might be confused, because in one place he can do whatever he wants, and then he goes over there, and
I
now
don't think he's confused.
she's very strict and doesn't allow him to do whatever
That's
he
the,
wants.
she's very clear about the environment.
Yeah,
So yeah, he's not confused.
he
He has a job.
personality.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it just, no, it's a good conversation around the behavior and
Yeah.
trying to understand it. And so, you know, me, what am I wanting to do? I want to talk to the dog. You know, I want to hear his side of his viewpoint. I mean, I have my kind of interpretation of it, of what might be going on, but who knows, right? Innate and learned behaviors. Who knows how his mind works being domesticated in a place where he has no rules, you know?
Mhm.
And even if his time is split, it's like most kids, I use that air quotes here, most kids learn how to deal with that when they go to one parent to another, right?
Yeah.
They adapt. So, good questions.
I got so much information. Thank you, everybody.
You are very welcome. It was good questions. I want to thank everybody today. It was fun. So I'll send this off and everybody stay warm, right?
Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys. See you next week.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
This
Bye-bye.
was so fun. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad.
Thanks, Cindy. See you tomorrow.
You are welcome. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Beverly.